That's a great round of applause. I haven't even said anything yet. Let's see if I get a round of applause at the end. So my name's David Shackleton. I'm the co-founder and CEO of OpenBack. So OpenBack is a platform, a solution to help improve user engagement and also customer experience when it comes to app messaging, so push notifications and in-app messaging. So my background, I co-founded a business about 15 years ago called Ding, which is not in gaming, but it's a mobile top-up app, and we do $500 million in mobile top-up all over the world. And it was during that scaling up of that business, with about 250 people in that business, I became obsessed with push notifications, and I saw this whole new way to talk to consumers, talk to users of apps, but got very frustrated where a lot of the times push notifications wouldn't get delivered. So we'd send out a notification and half the people in the office wouldn't receive it, and we could never really understand why. And so I spun up a sort of a separate team, and that's really where the genesis and what came out of OpenBack, out of that came OpenBack, this platform which lots of gaming apps, Game Insight, Jumpstart Games, and lots of other apps outside of the gaming sector as well use us to do a better job of push notifications. So I'm going to talk more generally about different industry trends, different themes, and I'm going to sort of share our views of what we think the future as it relates to app messaging and user engagement through push and in-app will happen. So I'm going to touch first around mobile engagement and some trends and some best practices and things we see working there. I'm going to talk about data privacy, which is a really hot topic. I'm going to talk about in relation to mobile engagement, and then at the end I'm going to talk more generically about edge computing and how edge computing and on-device computing is helping apps do a better job of mobile engagement. Now, at the end of the day, these three topics are core to the solution we've built out in OpenBack, but I'm just going to talk generically about it, and there's lots of learnings and stuff here if you decide to build out parts of this yourselves, or approach your developers to build out stuff along these lines yourselves. So please shout at me if it becomes a sales pitch, because that's not my intention. And I definitely won't get a clap if that happens. So I think everybody here will know app success is very hard. Retention, 14-day retention in particular, very difficult to do. You'll all want to talk to your users more often. You'll want them to come back into the game, to play more, do more, hopefully maybe do an IEP, an in-app purchase. But it's tough because you've got to balance that with pissing off the customer, pissing off the player, so they either turn off notifications, which stops you from talking to them again, or worse, they sort of delete your app and have a bad experience. We ultimately believe, and probably one of the first things we talk about, is you should think about push notifications as part of your user experience in your game. Every game is different, but so many of a user's journey or their experience when playing starts with a push notification telling them something and coming back in. Outside of gaming, we're doing some work with Twitter at the moment around their push notifications. 68% of people that come to the Twitter app, that experience starts with a push notification. And so we're very sort of strong and have a core belief around your UX, your design, it should start with the notification, because a lot of times that's where that user journey starts. The lock screen on your device has become the home screen now, and it's core territory. I think push notification, every app, every game is different. We often get asked for stats, and I have a best practice guide I can send to anybody, but you do see massive increases in retention over a period of time. Again, outside gaming, one interesting to share a bit of work with Farfetch, the luxury fashion app. They now sell more from their push notification campaigns than they do from email and email newsletters. Now, it's traditional e-commerce, but it does show how much consumer behavior and user behavior with their phones is changing. You'll also see the OSs, so both iOS and Android continue to innovate, and every major release, and sometimes dot releases of the mobile OSs, improve what's possible with push notifications. There's a couple of years lag to games and apps actually taking advantage of this technology, so we're working on a couple of projects with gaming apps where we take advantage of interactive notifications, so you could actually extend the gameplay to start on the notification screen. So it could be, there's a particular game we're working with where actually you'll get notified if somebody's attacking you in the game, multiplayer game, and you'll be able to turn on your shields from an interactive button on the lock screen of the device. So you're starting to see more and more of these sorts of capabilities be available on the operating system, and therefore available to anybody with an iOS or Android app. There's loads of examples. If you check out our Twitter feed of people doing horrible things with notifications, delivering in the middle of the night, sending out the wrong content, sending out, through whatever system errors or fat finger issues or whatever it is, multiple notifications multiple times, and users do punish for that behavior. People will opt out, will turn off notifications. We're able to track not just do people just turn off notifications, but in iOS do they decide to sort of deliver silently, so it doesn't appear on the lock screen, it still gets the notification center. Ultimately, the biggest advice when it comes to mobile engagement is the moment of delivery matters hugely. People get a notification, they'll either click on it and engage and sort of follow through into, deep link into wherever in your app makes sense. If they don't, they'll ignore it, right? And it'll just sit in the notification center until it expires. Interestingly, notifications in the notification center expire some arbitrary random number, but typically between 10 and 16 days. We haven't been able to reverse engineer for iOS or Android exactly what makes a notification disappear from a notification center. If you control the moment of delivery, and we talk about moment and encourage people to think about the moment of delivery as not just time, so not just the time, conventionally you might send from server side or the time that you schedule a local notification, but think of time as being multiple contextual things. A moment could be when somebody unlocks their device and it's between 6 and 8 p.m. and they're sitting on the couch at home. That's a moment defined by more than just the hours on the clock. Kind of small, but if you email me, I'll send them to you. This is some data across a whole bunch of anonymized data across a whole bunch of different apps. And what it's showing here on these charts, you can kind of see the difference between different regions, right? So if you look at the top, US and Canada, this is the time of day that somebody clicked a notification, not when it was delivered to their device or not when it was sent from server side. And what you'll see is that distribution across 24 hours. In the US, people much more likely to click evening time. UK and Ireland clustered. I'm from Ireland, so I want to get Ireland on the slide. It tends to be a higher chance of click-through of an interaction earlier in the day. Actually, there's another slide that sort of breaks it for Middle East and Russia as well, which I can send to anybody. A couple of other quick ones. Doing what we call a pre-permission dialogue. So when your app pops up looking for permission to send that user notifications, you're better to put up a dialogue before that and explain some reason why you should give permission. So maybe you tell them there's occasionally special offers or there's free giveaways or whatever the message case makes sense for your game. The other one is if you have within your UI, within your interface, if there's a way to sort of have a persistent reminder, so something to tell somebody if they've turned off notifications, try and encourage them to give you that chance to send them messages and re-engage with them. Content personalization, so this is actually the content of the message. Huge impacts to click-throughs and engagement if you personalize that content. It could be their username, could be their real name if you have it. We're going to talk about data privacy in a minute. Or it could be something to do with the last level they completed or whatever the case may be. But making that notification personal to that user has a massive impact on how many people will engage further with it. Emojis work for about 6 to 8 weeks, so you'll get a good lift in click-through by using some emojis. We've never seen it go negative, if that makes sense. So you'll see a spike in click-through and then app opens and re-engagement that lasts, but it does sort of, the impact declines over time. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about data privacy. So this kind of horrible data-heavy slide, text-heavy slide. So really, I guess the data privacy when it comes to kind of mobile games, think about it's obviously GDPR and what's nicknamed GDPR-K in Europe, and GDPR-K is around kids. So if you have players that are under 16 in Europe, you need to think deeply about these 4 sort of buckets of area. In the US, it's the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, whose legislation is COPPA. For them, a child is defined as under 13. And then more recently, you've kind of got the California CCPA, which has just kind of come into law recently. So that's some of the key legislation to think about, but it does break down into consent. So asking users for the appropriate permissions depending on what data you collect. And often there's a bit of thinking and interrogation that needs to go into that on consent. Users have to be able to access their own personal data, move it around, manipulate it. Ultimately, it's their data. They have to have the right to be forgotten, so you need to give them an option to delete their data. Can be automated, can also be an email to customer support as well. And then some different legislations will require you to control where that data is stored. The big one when it comes to mobile games, and we haven't seen a single fine based on this, alone, but the FTC in the US does consider push notification tokens as personal data. So you'll see a lot of, like we've been doing some work with Disney recently, they don't do any push notifications on their app because they're terrified the FTC will fine them. They're a large, well-known group that they would get a fine if they did it. And the reason it is because when you install an app on your phone and allow push notifications, there's a unique token, and you collect, or your vendor collects that token to the cloud, and you can use that to send that one person a message back. So that's why they've decided. Now, there's a lot of industry debate back, it's probably 10 years ago, around that being considered, because Europe is grey on this topic at the moment. Now, the FTC has done sort of industry engagement, and there was a deadline of 11th of December, I think it was. Yeah, it's up there, 11th of December, for industry to make submissions. So there is a new version of COPPA, which we think a draft version will be shared at some stage during 2020, is the best information we have. But it is something to keep an eye on, and we expect to see more of, the recent YouTube fine you may have seen, it was a small enough amount of money around content on YouTube being tagged for kids or not, and YouTube were fined and have now implemented that. To a lot of content producers weren't so happy about it. If you think you fall within this, or you have kids playing your game, one thing we recommend is sort of do a data journey mapping, right? What data, what unique identifiers, if any, are leaving the device, what are you collecting? So moving into sort of edge computing and where we sort of see the future. So we do think push notifications are very broken. If you think about how your app engages with users, you really can't do that much more typically than you could do with email 10 years ago, right? You sort of collect information from your app to cloud to server side. You decide which users are going to get. You segment the users in the cloud. You send them some content. You track how many notifications you've sent from server side, and you can correlate that to how many people opened your app. But there's big challenges. So delivery rate is a challenge that most people don't know exists. So the longer it goes from when somebody last opened your app, the lower the delivery rate for a remote push notification sent out. A lot of the challenge of this gets a little bit technical, but when you collect this push token, the push token can change. So sometimes if there's an operating system update I'll break the stage. If there's an operating system update, I'm going to leave somebody else fix that. If there's an operating system update, it can change. So we see 2.5%, 2.8% of tokens change month to month. As you some bleed there, and then also Firebase and Apple's APNS delivering, you see some losses there. There's lots of first in, first out type rules. The biggest factor in the poor delivery rates is actually the device. So your device and mobile OS will throttle how often your app can check to see if there's notifications to conserve battery. We see edge computing and device side on device being, I guess, a pervasive trend. In general, edge computing is all around processing data closer to where that data is consumed. So it could be, a data center that's closer to you, or it could be a data center, and there's lots of solution providers, that on your mobile network beside your device, which cuts down latency, also reduces cloud costs because more of that processing is happening out on the edge, and it does have data privacy advantages because all the user's data does not have to come up to cloud systems to be processed. We believe that edge computing and doing more device side will unlock and enable people to do an awful lot more and improve this notification layer and this sort of primary interface on the device. We think that controlling the messaging to users from the app that's in their pocket is a key thing that just must happen. So in a 10-year view, your apps on your phone and your smartphone get smarter. It's going to be smarter and smarter about when it presents things to you. And that could be a special offer for a purchase in a game, or it could be a reminder that, to turn your shields on. By Enabling your app on the device to control what notifications happen. You obviously can do things in real time because it's all happening on device. You're able to not just deliver notifications, you're also able to take them away again or update the content, right? So we work with the largest rugby app in the world, and when your favorite team is playing and they score points, the score in the game dynamically updates on your lock screen, right? So for a game, that could be, the number of minutes until you respawn, or whatever the use case may be. You can also control the moment of delivery, so your phone knows when it's been unlocked, or you can use machine learning to figure out when somebody's at home without ever tracking their location by using accelerometer, Wi-Fi, and charging patterns. And then you can also see far more on the metrics side of things, so you can see not just did you send it from server side, but did somebody read your notification and swipe it away. So again, and it solves on the delivery side. We have a sort of recommended set of metrics you should think about for app messaging. Again, controlling the moment. And I think the impact we see from customers and with our customers and their users is much higher opt-in rates. People give permission for longer, and more people give permission to send these notifications, and the click-through rates can be times 4. I mean, we have customers that have 10 times their notification rates by taking advantage of this. So we believe that edge computing and on-device is going to be a key future trend around making notifications more reliable and data privacy compliant. So that is I had to sprint at the end there. I'll blame the stage falling apart for that. Does anybody have any questions?
Do we have time for questions? We've got time for maybe yeah, just one quick question if anybody's got one.
Not even required.
Nothing.
Thank you very much for your time anyway.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I got a clap.